May 17, 1943. North Atlantic, 520 miles west of Ireland. 3:47 hours. The iron hull of U-456 shuddered as Captain Lieutenant Max Martin Teichert watched his radioman carefully adjust the dials on the boat's newest piece of equipment. In the red glow of the control room, the METOX detector sat like a prized possession, a black box with a distinctive cross-shaped antenna the crews had nicknamed Biscay Cross. The device emitted a soft, rhythmic clicking sound through its headphones. Silence meant safety. A warning tone meant Allied radar was searching for them. Tonight, blessed silence. Nothing, Herr Kalu, the operator reported. We can surface safely. Teichert allowed himself a thin smile. For 6 months now, the METOX FU-MB-1 had been their guardian angel. British aircraft equipped with ASV Mark II radar had been slaughtering U-boats on the surface throughout 1942, 57 boats lost in the Bay of Biscay alone. But since December, when BDU, Befehlshaber der U-Boot Command, distributed these French-made detectors to the fleet, the death rate had plummeted. The logic was beautiful in its simplicity. British ASV radar operated on 1.5-meter wavelength. The METOX could detect these transmissions at roughly 30 kilometers, triple the radar's own effective range. A U-boat would hear the hunter long before the hunter could see the hunted. What Teichert didn't know, what none of them knew, was that every time his METOX detector powered on, it screamed his position across 400 kilometers of open ocean. The device that was supposed to save them was a lighthouse in the darkness. The METOX FU-MB-1 arrived in U-boat hands through a circuitous route that should have raised more questions than it answered. French company METOX manufactured the original units, designed to detect the 1.5-meter ASV Mark II radar. The specifications seemed reasonable enough. Detection range, 30 kilometers, versus radar effective range of 10 kilometers, frequency coverage, 120 to 250 MHz power source. U-boat's electrical system antenna configuration, distinctive cruciform wooden frame weight, 8.5 kilograms receiver sensitivity, sufficient to detect 2 kilowatts transmissions. By February 1943, nearly every operational U-boat carried one. The device became standard equipment, as essential as the periscope or torpedo tubes. In his headquarters in Berlin, Großadmiral Karl Donitz reviewed the statistics with satisfaction. U-boat losses in January 1943, 15 boats. February, 19 boats. Still painful, but manageable. The previous year had seen months where losses exceeded 30 boats. The METOX was working. Or so it seemed. Allied Forces Headquarters, London. March 1943. Commander Peter Gretton of the Royal Navy Escort Groups noticed something disturbing in his after-action reports. His destroyers and corvettes, working with RAF Coastal Command aircraft, were still finding U-boats with unsettling accuracy. The Germans should have been invisible, warned of approaching aircraft by their detectors. Yet Allied aircraft continued to catch them on the surface. They should be diving before we're in range, Gretton told his intelligence liaison. Their detector supposedly gives them 15 to 20 minutes of warning. Why are they still surfacing into our attacks? The liaison had no answer. British intelligence knew about the METOX. Captured units had been examined, their capabilities assessed. On paper, the device should work exactly as advertised. The mystery deepened when U-boat radio intercepts revealed increasing German confidence in their detection equipment. A decrypted message from BDU to all boats in March read, METOX has proven reliable. Trust your equipment. Continue normal surface operations for battery charging. The Germans were doing everything right, following their doctrine, trusting their technology, and still dying in unprecedented numbers. April 1943. The statistics became impossible to ignore. Despite carrying METOX detectors, U-boat losses in April reached 15 boats again. May would be catastrophic. 41 boats lost, the worst month in U-boat history. The Black May would eventually force Donitz to temporarily withdraw from the North Atlantic entirely. But here was the puzzle that kept Allied intelligence awake at night. German radio intercepts showed U-boat commanders reporting that their METOX units were functioning perfectly. They detected radar. They provided warnings. The equipment worked exactly as designed. So why were they dying? British scientists considered several possibilities. The Allies had deployed new, undetectable radar, but that alone didn't explain the pattern. German detector coverage had gaps, testing showed otherwise. U-boats were ignoring warnings, intercepts proved they weren't, something else entirely, something the Germans themselves didn't understand. In a small laboratory in Malvern, England, a junior radar technician named Harold Barberi was about to stumble onto the answer while testing captured German equipment. He powered up a METOX unit for routine analysis, and his test equipment, designed to detect stray electromagnetic emissions, went absolutely berserk. The needle pegged. The readings were impossible. Barberi checked his equipment. Recalibrated. Tested again. The METOX wasn't just receiving radar signals. It was broadcasting them. The detector was a transmitter. The Guardian Angel was a flare gun. And every U-boat in the Atlantic was firing one directly at the sky every time they checked if it was safe to surface. But the truly devastating part, the detail that would make this one of history's most catastrophic equipment failures, was still being calculated. The METOX's unintended transmissions operated on frequencies around 240 MHz, using the boat's own electrical system as an amplifier. Initial estimates suggested these emissions might be detectable at perhaps 15 to 20 kilometers in perfect conditions, problematic but not catastrophic. The actual figure was 40 times greater. Allied aircraft equipped with the right receiving equipment that had been installed almost by accident, designed for entirely different purposes, could detect METOX emissions at ranges exceeding 400 kilometers. 400! The device meant to warn U-boats at 30 kilometers was announcing their presence at a distance 12 times greater than their own detection range. A U-boat commander checking his METOX to ensure no radar was searching for him was, in fact, ensuring that every Allied aircraft within 400 kilometers knew exactly where to look. Dr. Robert Cockburn, leading the British countermeasures team, later recalled his reaction to the discovery. "We couldn't believe it at first. We ran the tests 3 times. The Germans had handed us their entire fleet on a silver platter, and they didn't even know they'd done it." May 1943. The killing reaches its peak. U-954, commanded by Captain Lieutenant Odo Lowy, departed Brest on May 5. The boat carried a full load of torpedoes, a veteran crew, and a properly functioning METOX detector. On May 19, RAF Wellington U/172 detected unusual emissions at extreme range. The aircraft vectored toward the signal. At 4:15 hours, still beyond visual range, the Wellington's ASV Mark III radar, a new 10-centimeter system the METOX couldn't detect, painted a perfect target. U-954 was on the surface, charging batteries. The METOX showed no threats. The Wellington dropped 4 depth charges. U-954 sank with all hands. 52 men died, confident in their equipment until the moment the ocean crushed their hull. This pattern repeated itself with mechanical precision throughout May. 41 U-boats lost. The METOX detector was present on virtually every one. In Berlin, Donitz faced a catastrophic puzzle. His boats were dying faster than he could build them. But every report from the front indicated the METOX was working perfectly. Commanders trusted it. Crews relied on it. The equipment functioned exactly as specified. What Donitz called the radar mystery consumed German naval intelligence. They theorized infrared detection, secret new radar frequencies. Even that Allied aircraft could somehow smell the diesel exhaust from U-boats. Never, not once, did they consider that their own equipment was betraying them. The answer was right there in their hands, in every U-boat, broadcasting into the void. But they couldn't see it. Wouldn't see it. The psychological investment in the METOX was too great. It had to work. It was working. And so U-boats continued to surface, powered up their METOX detectors to verify safety, and painted perfect targeting beacons across the Atlantic night. By June 1943, Allied aircraft were achieving kill rates that defied probability. They knew where every U-boat was before the U-boats knew where they were. The hunters had become the hunted, and they'd brought their own spotlights to the hunting ground. The METOX, model FU-MB-1, continued standard issue to U-boats through mid-1943. Production numbers from French manufacturers: 6,427 units delivered. Installation rate on operational boats: 94%. Cost per unit: approximately 850 Reichsmarks. Cost in submarines lost while using the device: at least 87 U-boats, representing 4,350 trained submariners and an industrial investment exceeding 350 million Reichsmarks. All because a radio receiver was also, inadvertently, magnificently, catastrophically, a radio transmitter. And the Germans never counted what their sets were transmitting, only what they were receiving. June 3, 1943. HMS Starling, Mid-Atlantic. Captain Frederick John Walker, the Royal Navy's most successful U-boat hunter, stood on his destroyer's bridge studying a curious report from RAF Coastal Command. Aircraft were detecting anomalous signals at extreme ranges, signals that seemed to correlate perfectly with U-boat positions. Walker was a veteran of 36 U-boat kills. He understood patterns. And this pattern was extraordinary. "They're illuminating themselves," he muttered to his first officer. "But they don't know it." The first officer looked skeptical. "Sir, German engineering is excellent," Walker interrupted, "which is why they trust it absolutely, and why they won't question it until it's far too late." He was right. The evidence was mounting, but the Germans were looking in entirely the wrong direction. The first definitive proof came from a captured U-boat radioman in early June 1943. Oberfunkmate, Petty Officer Radio Operator Werner Schultz, pulled from the frigid Atlantic after U-202 sinking, was questioned by British intelligence at the London Cage, the secretive interrogation facility in Kensington. Like all German POWs, Schultz initially provided only name, rank, and serial number. But the British interrogators weren't asking about weapons or tactics. They wanted to know about the METOX. "Tell us about your detector equipment," Lieutenant Commander Ian Fleming, yes, that Ian Fleming, asked casually. "The METOX unit. How did it perform?" Schultz's face brightened. "Perfectly. It saved us many times. We could hear the British radar from very far away. We always had time to dive. Always." A pause. Schultz's expression clouded. "Almost always. Sometimes the aircraft appeared very quickly. We thought perhaps they had new radar we couldn't detect." Fleming leaned forward. "When you used the METOX, how often did you check it?" "Constantly when surfaced. Every few minutes. Standard procedure. We would switch it on, scan all frequencies, verify no radar signals present. And then we knew it was safe to remain on the surface." Fleming wrote in his intelligence report that night, "Subject demonstrates complete confidence in detector equipment. Appears unaware that device operation might have adverse effects. Recommend immediate technical analysis of captured units with focus on emission profile rather than reception capability." The technical analysis revealed a comedy of errors so profound it bordered on tragic. The METOX FU-MB-1 was essentially a modified civilian radio receiver, adapted for detecting radar frequencies. The French designers at METOX had focused entirely on sensitivity and range, making sure it could hear whispers of radar from far away. What they hadn't adequately considered was electromagnetic shielding. The device's local oscillator, The component that generated reference frequencies for the receiver leaked like a sieve. Dr. Harold Barberi, the technician who first detected the emissions, provided a detailed breakdown. METOX FU-MB1 emission profile. Primary leak frequency, 240 MHz, plus or minus 10 MHz depending on tuning. Power output, approximately 100 milliwatts. Unintended radiation pattern, omnidirectional from the Biscay cross antenna modulation. Characteristic warbling tone as operator tuned through frequencies. Duration, typically 3 to 5 minutes per check, per U-boat operational doctrine. Frequency, every 10 to 15 minutes while surfaced. Under ideal conditions, with a sensitive receiver and good atmospheric propagation, these emissions could be detected at distances exceeding 400 kilometers. Under typical Atlantic conditions, 180 to 250 kilometers. Compare this to the METOX's intended detection range, 30 kilometers for ASV Mark II radar. A U-boat using METOX to check for threats at 30 kilometers was announcing its presence at 180 kilometers, a 6-to-1 ratio of vulnerability to awareness. The Allied response. Operation Balsam. By July 1943, RAF Coastal Command had secretly equipped numerous patrol aircraft with special receivers tuned to detect METOX emissions. The program, codenamed Balsam, was so classified that most aircrew didn't understand what the equipment actually detected. They were told only, when this receiver activates, proceed immediately to those coordinates. High probability U-boat contact. Flight Lieutenant James Wright flew Wellington bombers out of RAF Chivener. In his logbook, he recorded the results with clinical precision. July 8. Balsam contact 185 kilometers. Proceeded to location. U-boat surfaced. Attack successful. U-514. Sunk. July 12. Balsam contact 220 kilometers. Vectored to coordinates. U-boat crash diving as we arrived. Attacked. U-135 damaged, later sunk by surface escort. July 19. Balsam contact 168 kilometers. U-boat on surface, detected our approach at approximately 8 kilometers, visual range. Too late to dive. U-558 sunk. July 24. Balsam contact 241 kilometers. Approached from downwind. U-boat completely unaware until depth charges released. U-527 sunk with all hands. Wright's notation on July 24 included a chilling observation, watched through night glasses. Target appeared to be scanning with detector equipment when we commenced attack. They thought they were checking for threats. They were broadcasting their obituary. The pattern was unmistakable, but the Germans couldn't see it. BDU intelligence analyzed every U-boat loss, searching for the common factor. They identified several. Most attacks occurred while boats were surfaced, expected. Submarines are vulnerable on surface. Attacks often happen despite METOX showing no radar signals. Concerning, suggested new undetectable radar. Aircraft frequently approached from extreme range with uncanny accuracy. Very concerning, suggested new detection method. Several boats reported METOX functioning normally seconds before attack. Contradictory data. What they never considered, the METOX itself was the common factor. Donit's War Diary entry, July 18, 1943. The enemy apparently possesses detection device working on different principles than radar. Extensive investigations ordered. METOX to remain in service pending alternative explanation. The investigation focused on infrared detection, new radar frequencies, and even the possibility that Allies had broken German codes and were reading U-boat position reports. All of these theories had elements of truth. New radar existed, codes were partially broken, but none explained the specific pattern. The simplest explanation, that their trusted equipment was betraying them, was psychologically impossible to accept. August 1943. The death toll continues. U-404, commanded by Corvettenkapitän Adolf Schönberg, departed Brest on August 11. Schönberg was a veteran with multiple successful patrols. He trusted his equipment implicitly. August 28, 1943. Position: approximately 450 miles west of Brittany. Time: 22:40 hours. Schunberg ordered the boat to surface for battery charging. Standard procedure: activate METOX, scan for radar signals, verify safety before surfacing. The METOX operator reported, "All frequencies clear, Herr Kalu. No radar detected." U-404 surfaced. The diesel engines roared to life. The battery charge began. What Schunberg didn't know, at that exact moment, RAF Sunderland Z/201 was 192 kilometers to the northeast. The aircraft's balsam receiver had activated 18 minutes earlier. The navigator had calculated an intercept course. The pilot had throttled up to maximum speed. At 23:14 hours, U-404's lookout spotted the aircraft. Already in attack position, depth charges falling. Schunberg later recalled in interrogation, "There was no warning. The METOX showed nothing. One moment we were safe, charging batteries. The next, we were under attack. It was impossible. Their aircraft appeared from nowhere." U-404 survived the attack with heavy damage and limped back to France. Schunberg filed a detailed report questioning the METOX's reliability. The report was filed, analyzed, and the conclusion reached: Schunberg must have misunderstood his equipment's readings. The METOX was reliable. The problem must lie elsewhere. By late August 1943, the statistical evidence was overwhelming. U-boats with functioning METOX detectors. Average time surfaced before detection: 23 minutes average detection range by Allied aircraft. 180-220 km successful crash dives. Boat reaches safety depth 12% loss rate, 41% per patrol. U-boats with disabled or absent METOX. Average time surfaced before detection: 67 minutes average detection range, 18 to 25 kilometers. Radar range only, successful crash dives, 58% loss rate, 19% per patrol. The boats without the protective equipment were surviving at more than twice the rate. But these statistics weren't being compared in this way. German analysts saw U-boats with and without METOX being attacked and concluded that attacks were happening regardless of equipment. Therefore, the problem wasn't the METOX. The logic was impeccable. The conclusion was catastrophic. September 1943. The first doubts. Captain Zur C. Eberhard Gott, Chief of Operations at BDU, received a troubling report from U-270's commander, Captain Lieutenant Paul Friedrich Otto. Unlike other commanders, Otto had conducted an experiment. For 3 days, Otto kept his METOX detector switched off entirely. The boat surfaced only under absolute necessity, relying on lookouts and operational security. Result: no air attacks despite being in heavily patrolled areas. On the 4th day, Otto activated the METOX to test a theory. Within 40 minutes, an Allied aircraft appeared, approaching from extreme range with suspicious accuracy. Otto's report concluded, "I believe our detector equipment may be detectable by enemy forces. Recommend immediate investigation." Gott's response, dated September 24, 1943, "Your concerns are noted. Technical evaluation finds no evidence of detector emissions. Equipment remains approved for operations. However, recommend judicious use. Activate only when necessary." The warning signs were there. The pattern was visible. But the institutional momentum was unstoppable. Millions of Reichsmarks invested. Thousands of units manufactured. Entire operational doctrine built around the device. The psychological and financial cost of admitting error was too great. So the METOX remained in service. And U-boats continued to die. The ratio held steady. For every U-boat that successfully detected Allied radar with the METOX, 6 were detected by the Allies because of the METOX. 6 to 1. The mathematics of defeat. and the Germans were counting the ones, ignoring the sixes, certain that their engineering, German engineering, precise and reliable, couldn't possibly be the problem. The truth was screaming at them across 400 kilometers of electromagnetic spectrum. They just couldn't hear it over their confidence.